The closer the YNW Melly trial is to its end, the slimmer his chances of beating the case seem to be. The new leaked text message now exposes Melly, and it seems like he snitched on himself. Back in October of 2018, some crazy stuff went down with YNW Melly and his crew. They were just chilling at a recording studio, having a good time, not knowing that something super tragic was about to happen. After leaving the studio, things took a dark turn. YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser got shot and lost their lives, man. It was a total shock to everyone involved. YNW Portland had to deal with the aftermath, so he rushed their lifeless bodies to a nearby hospital, saying they got hit in a drive-by shooting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But you know how it goes, the truth always finds a way to show itself. The authorities didn't take it lightly and hit him hard with first-degree murder charges for Sack and Juvie. It turned into a crazy legal mess that they could not ignore. Then on February 13th, 2019, boom! They got busted and thrown behind bars. Throughout the whole legal drama, Melly kept insisting he was innocent, standing strong with a not guilty plea. It was the start of a wild journey towards justice, full of uncertainty and the search for what really went down. So after what felt like an eternity, YNW Melly's trials finally happened and took the state a whopping 5 years to put together a case, and now it's all going down in the courtroom. Melly's future hangs in the balance, and it's some serious stuff here. The state is going all out, even seeking the death penalty, showing they mean business and consider these kinds of crimes super grave. They're accusing Melly of a brutal double homicide, and the state is going hard to paint him as the stone-cold, heartless criminal. But you know what? The defense ain't taking it lying down. They're pushing back like crazy, questioning the state's claims, dissecting all the evidence, and raising all sorts of doubts about the investigation process. Let's rewind to that fateful night again, back in October of 2018, when YNW Portland rocked up at the hospital with Juvie and Sack Chaser's lifeless bodies in the car. He said it was a drive-by shooting, but here's the twist: people got suspicious because he didn't have any injuries himself. And there's more to the story too. His cooperation with the cops was full of loopholes. The trial goes on, Portland's also dealing with his own charges, adding to the drama. And if things weren't intense enough, Melly's facing the death penalty under Florida's new law, where they only need an 8-4 vote in favor of capital punishment for the sentencing. This whole situation is just off the charts. So the courtroom action kicked off with Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley giving the gripping opening statement, painting YNW Melly as this heartless killer. She went all out, describing every chilling detail of that tragic night. It was intense, man. But Melly's defense ain't backing down for a second. Attorney David Howard is leading the charge, and he's on fire. He's questioning the whole investigation, raising eyebrows about potential tunnel vision from the detectives. Howard's basically saying they were laser focused on Melly, thinking he's the only bad guy in town. And that's not all. The defense is poking holes in the forensic evidence, making a big deal about how there's no murder weapon found, and doubting the reliability of the gunshot residue testing. They're playing hardball from day one, and their game plan is all about showing how the case is mostly based on circumstances. They're leaving no stone unturned to protect Melly's innocence, no doubt about it. The surveillance footage was like a major bombshell in this whole thing. It showed Melly, Borland, and all the victims all together in the car at the time of the supposed incident. And if that wasn't enough, the phone data, blood spatter analysis, and a bullet casing found in the vehicle just piled on the evidence for prosecution. But hold up, things got twisty when audio recordings of YNW Portland talking to a detective contradicted the whole drive-by story. The detective was like, nah man, that location ain't right, casting doubt on this whole deal. The crime scene investigator stepped up to the plate talking about how they searched that car supposedly used in the drive-by setup. But the defense wasn't taking it lightly. They were all over the evidence collection, questioning the visibility of fingerprints and why all items weren't tested for DNA. One investigator even messed up by handling the evidence that seriously raised some questions about how legit their findings were. With all this crazy stuff going on, the absence of the murder weapon just added even more doubt. The defense was convincing the jury that there was no solid proof in this case. They were playing it cool, knowing the lack of concrete evidence could work in their favor. The very first witness that was called up to testify was a woman by the name of Felicia Holmes. She's a nurse who got dragged into this mess because her daughter was dating YNW Melly during all of this. The defense tried to twist her statements around, saying that she lied to the authorities, but they couldn't get a mistrial out of it. The state bringing up Felicia and sticking on Melly's side was a clear win for Melly's defense. You can bet that the second week of the trial was a real roller coaster, full of drama and tension that had everyone on the edge of their seats. The whole thing was like a captivating show. The spotlight was on the cell phone evidence, a big deal in modern trials these days. This FBI agent, Brendan Collins, took the stage and analyzed 2 phones connected to Melly and one of the victims. Prosecution said that the data from these phones places Melly super close to the victims right before their tragic end. And guess what? The defense had a different story to tell. They started raising eyebrows about the accuracy of the location data and even questioned if Melly was the only one using the phone. And then there was this DNA analysis too. The prosecution brought up DNA evidence saying it proves Melly was inside the car during the shootings, but the defense was sharp. They pointed out that Melly's DNA didn't match other stuff they examined, poking holes in the idea of him being directly involved in this crime. Oh, and if you thought nobody would mention Melly's affiliation with the Bloods, well, you would be mistaken. The prosecution tried to paint Melly as tied to the G-Shine Bloods gang, showing social media posts, videos, and references to the gangs in his songs. They wanted to prove a connection, but the defense was trying to refute their argument by saying that this gang image isn't for real, more like an online persona. So in the third week of the trial, things got pretty hectic. Super sharp analysts took the stand, and man, they dropped a bombshell that shattered the whole idea of a drive-by shooting. They went all out, reconstructing the events like they were in some crime drama, and what they found was mind-blowing. You won't believe it, but during YNW Juvie's postpartum checkup, they found this crazy injury on his left cheek with little gunshot residue marks. And then this shooting expert came forward explaining how they traced the shot's origin and path like a real pro. The most important finding was that those shots weren't from some passing car. No. They were fired from the back seat of the driver's side. The real question always was how much time passed between those fatal shots and the carefully planned cover-up. That time gap is super important because that way we would know for certain if Sack and Juvie were already gone by the time that the rounds came from the inside. Now, let's dive back into the crazy case of YNW Bortland and his chat with the police. It's like getting tangled in a web of statements and suspicions.
I kind of think I know what happened because I got information that something else happened on the east side of the city in Pembroke Parks, but which sounds similar to your thing, but you need to tell it. You need to be straight up with us.
So in this new recording that you just heard, Bortland talked about that crazy night, saying they were victims of a drive-by shooting after leaving the studio. However, as you can imagine, some investigators find some holes in their story, making them doubt if they're being straight with them. You can totally hear it in Bortland's voice. He's all nervous during the chat with the cops. They don't buy some of his claims and start questioning the location of the supposed shooting, pushing him for the real deal. When the cops dug into possible motives and conflicts, Bortland got all vague and dodgy. He talked about social media drama and beef with some people, but he's not giving them any clear answers. The biggest mistake that Bortland made was claiming that he doesn't have a phone on him. That's when cops really started stretching their heads. You're talking about social media and all that jazz, yet you don't even use a phone? Wait a minute now. Bortland wasn't cooperating with the boys in blue, and to top it all off, he was straight up lying to them. His story kept changing, which just frustrated the investigators even more. They made it very clear and told Bortland that their top priority is just solving the murder of his friends. All that other legal stuff is secondary. They begged him to be honest with them, but he just kept avoiding their questions, making their job and lives miserable. This recording paints a messy and suspicious picture. Bortland was acting all sneaky, and the answers were all over the place, making the cops wonder what's really going on here. That's probably going to bite him in the end once this trial starts later this year. Coming back to the courtroom and present matters with Melly's trial, the spotlight shifted recently to the crucial talk about the phones and where they were during the shooting. Detective Mark Moretti was at the center of it all, breaking down the case in detail. The prosecution wanted to show a connection between Melly and the car where the crime supposedly happened, and they brought in some new info to back it up too. But here's the thing, the accuracy of those phone tower records got questioned, making people wonder if they can really pinpoint Melly's exact location when he was supposedly using that phone. And you know what? The defense pounced on that, going all out to challenge the credibility of the data as part of their plan. Detective Moretti let the jury know where Melly and his crew's phones were at the time. They looked into how close the phones were to the shell casings and other important evidence, and those call records played a big role in this whole story. But it gets even more intense. Guess whose name popped up in the convo? Fredo Bangs. That raised eyebrows about his involvement with Melly right before and after the murders. And then Sack's producer, Glass, gave some testimony that added more layers to this unfolding drama. The prosecution didn't stop there. They brought in a phone receipt from Melly's service provider, trying to link him to that phone in question. Let me tell you, things got complicated as they delved into multiple phone data points. At times, the jury struggled to see how they directly related to the main points the prosecution was making. Sack Chaser's producer spilled some juicy details from the studio surveillance tapes. They caught Melly, the victims, Fredo Bank, and a bunch of others hopping into two cars, a Jeep Compass and a red Mitsubishi. The prosecution really wanted Fredo to testify, but that dude refused to show up no matter what, pleading the fifth. After the studio session, Glass and his crew rode with Melly to his place and then swung by Fredo's crib to mourn their friend's loss. Amidst all this, Glass noticed something pretty weird. Melly had changed his clothes after that recording session earlier that night. Can you believe it? That raised some serious suspicion. But when they asked Glass about what went down at Fredo's, he got tight-lipped, playing it smooth and not spilling any important details. He said it was just the overwhelming grief that kept him quiet. However, he did let one thing slip that the prosecutor jumped on. He remembered that Melly changed his clothes from the moment that they left the studio until they met up again later.
Yeah. Was Melly wearing the same clothes or different clothes than when you saw him at the studio?
It was a new day. Nah, he wasn't.
Nah, he wasn't. You guys
wasn't wearing the same clothes.
Okay. Do you recall what he was wearing?
He just had on some shorts.
Okay.
Everyone in the courtroom had this nagging question in their heads. Why the heck did Melly and Bortland change their clothes and cruise around for almost 40 minutes instead of rushing to the hospital to check on their injured friends? It just didn't add up. And you know innocent folks wouldn't act like that. Nobody could figure out what was going on, and it left everyone feeling uncertain and full of doubt. Their actions were random and confusing, but whatever they did that night, it is definitely looking very suspicious, and their story is not making much sense. Apart from the text between Melly and Fredo Bang, the sheer amount of communication between Melly and others was mind-blowing. They presented so many messages in court, and it totally flipped the script on Melly's trial. The prosecution's goal was crystal clear. They wanted to show the jury how everything connects and revealed the truth. And you won't believe it, but amidst all the legal drama, there's some deep-rooted family drama adding fuel to the fire. It's a whole extra layer of intensity. We got to see the real deal of Melly and his mom's crazy relationship. Juvie's sister came in hot with her threats, which even led to a bodyguard getting hired by Melly's mom. Some of those messages were super cryptic, leaving us wondering if Melly really did the unthinkable. At one point during the conversation between Melly and his mom, we could hear Melly say stuff like, "Bitch, you gave me the cold shoulder because I couldn't find the blazer." Messages from Melly were all over the place. It's not even clear if they were meant for his mom or his ex-girlfriend, but one thing's for sure, he let some pretty messed up stuff slip. And that's not a good look, no matter who the messages were for. It gets even worse for Melly. He straight up said he's evil, like he's some kind of monster who just wants to be left alone. He told everyone to go for themselves. Not gonna lie, that's some heavy stuff, and you definitely don't want the jury seeing that. These people won't forget these critical moments like this. This whole situation is just adding more fuel to the fire for him, and it's not helping Melly's case at all. As the trial rolled on, we got a glimpse into some real conflicts inside the YNW crew that got Melly all frustrated. One thing that stood out was his desire for recognition and payment for his creative genius. And there was this mysterious "fi" thing that got people curious, wondering if it meant a weapon was involved. Those messages didn't flat out prove Melly had a gun during the murders, but they definitely added a crucial piece to this whole puzzle. The messages they showed in court painted a pretty scary and unresolved picture of what was going on between Melly, Sack Chaser, and the rest of the gang. It was like a power struggle, with Sack and Juvie trying to assert themselves as CEO of YNW, while Melly was the face of the brand. Their egos and visions clashed, and you could feel the underlying animosity. Money was a big issue too, creating a divide between Melly and Sack. When you read through those texts, you could see they had disputes about cash and cast shadows over their once close relationship. And then there were the creative problems too. Melly didn't fully support Sack's artistic endeavors, while Sack claimed he was playing a huge role in shaping Melly's sound, which only fueled the drama even further. Sack felt overshadowed by Melly's success, even though he was the one of the founding members of YNW. He also had this strange feeling like he had a premonition that something bad might go down. But here's the real head scratcher. On August 30th, 2018, Melly cryptically tells Sack that he can kill her with this "it is what it is" attitude, and it all alludes to some soul-selling deal that got everyone raising their eyebrows and scratching their heads. With all these revelations, you can't help but wonder what the heck is really going on. After all those messages were presented in court, it's clear they themselves had trouble understanding their issues with each other. But one thing's for sure, there was some serious bad blood between the YNW members. And get this, even though the defense wanted a mistrial based on those messages, the judge shut that down, saying they weren't directly relevant to the case.
Motion to that.
The prosecutor even tried to connect these messages to incriminating evidence, but not everyone's buying it. Even so, you could still see the actions and intentions seeping through those digital exchanges, giving us a clearer picture of what's going down behind the scenes. In the midst of all this uncertainty, those messages become super important in the trial, maybe even turning this seemingly motiveless case into something way bigger. Guess what? Melly's manager dropped some recent bombshells that add even more fuel to the fire, shining a light on this crazy drama that just won't fade away into the shadows. Amidst all this drama surrounding YNW Melly, this dude Jameson Francois, aka 100K Track, his manager, steps up to share his take on this whole mess. He's totally sure of himself, saying they messed up big time, accusing Melly of murder. Track's standing firm, convinced that the rapper is innocent, and he's got some inside info to back up his beliefs. But man, even with all that confidence, Track himself can't fully piece together what happened on that fateful night. He's not sure if they were at Melly's place or at Fredo's after Sack and Juvie's tragic incident. In this wild case, Track's revelations make things even more complex. His words echo through the courtroom, making us wonder if there's more to the story than we think.
Or Fredo house, honestly, because it was so long ago. But I remember his family was at his house, went to his house too, so it was like a little bit everybody was a little bit in different places and things like that. I don't remember exactly where I met him, but because I did go to both houses, so I really don't.
Track's attempt to recall the events didn't exactly inspire confidence. You'd think there'd be crystal clear memories during such a shocking and heartbreaking time, but instead, uncertainty lingers in the air. The very next day, despite everything that happened the night before, Melly still had a music video shoot to attend. Talk about a tough spot. He was dead set on keeping his commitment, so he mustered up the strength to show up for that shoot. This whole thing with grief and professional responsibilities made the trial feel pretty weird. During Track's interview, he mentioned how Melly managed to finish the music video even though he was grieving over the loss of his two brothers. It's like the clash between his personal life and his career. The manager said,
those commitments was done way prior before the incident. Those, deposits was paid and it was either A, refund back the money and funds and things like that, or, B, do what he got to do and just man up and do it. And he was able to put himself together and get it done. But the whole day, man, it was a very sad day. You could tell the atmosphere was down. His energy was down. He was trying to pick himself back up, trying to block it and just be professional and do what he got to do. But you could tell he was hurting really bad.
The manager also talked about this wild possibility that Melly might have been the target of assault. Could someone have wanted to take him out of the game? In the music industry, it's no secret that these things can get super cutthroat, and threats like that aren't all that uncommon, let's be honest here. Track even admitted that he's faced some similar challenges himself. It's crazy to think about the dark side of fame and all the potential dangers that lurk in the shadows.
When you're in the limelight and you're making money and things like that, you're going to receive hate. You're going to receive, death threats. You're going to receive things from everywhere, from people you know, people you don't know, people who probably feel obligated or feel, entitled to things, people who might not even know you from campaign and just don't like you. So, as an entertainer, your life is always, being threatened by somebody or someone.
The lead detective in the YNW Melly double murder trial wrapped up their questioning with a bombshell. They presented YNW Melly's Instagram messages after the shooting. It was a conversation between Melly and one of his friends. So on October 26, 2018, at 2000 hours and 2 minutes, 18 seconds UTC, YNW Melly's account replied with, "I did that," and a smiley emoji. It was in response to a message from the Peasy Gambino account, asking if he was okay. Then in another message on the same date, at 1602 from Utah Eastern Standard Time, YNW Melly is asked, "What?" referring to what it is he did, and the answer that Melly gives is, "Shh." Now what the state is trying to achieve with showing this message is that Melly himself admitted to murking Sack and Juvie. They believe that "I did that" in this instance is referring to Melly taking out his homies. However, the defense wasn't having any of that. The attorney was visibly upset because of what he believes to be a completely false accusation. He pointed out that the spelling of "that" in the messages varies. In most instances, YNW Melly spells "that" as D-A-T. Defense is pointing out this inconsistency and suggesting that it's unusual for him to change the spelling like that. Therefore, that message was written by someone else and not Melly. Furthermore, the attorney also highlighted that during the trial, the state introduced thousands of pages of phone messages and they are questioning their authenticity. The defense argues that the state brought in the FBI to analyze the cell site towers and not the actual phones themselves. Folks online aren't buying the attorney's bluff. Most folks believe that Melly did do it and that his message did in fact refer to him taking out Sack and Juvie. This guy's toast. His actions were premeditated. His arrogance led him to believe that he could outsmart everyone. Another person pointed out something that not many noticed, but is absolutely true. In saying that Melly usually spells "that" as "dat," they basically said it was Melly's phone. So basically, the defense is inadvertently admitting this is Melly's phone by trying to prove the way he spells "dat" as opposed to "that." So what y'all think about this recent development, and do you think Melly's chances are tight? Let us know what you think down in the comments section below. Be sure to click that like button, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And before you go, just remember to keep it RIZZLE.